IT, but things like this happen. Welcome to all of you, and it's a great occasion for me to come back to let you know about what Indian agriculture scenario is, since most of you are not actually from the field. Our voice is coming clear now? Hello?
Yes, perfectly audible.
Okay, all right. See, what's more important for us to understand is agriculture is the most important national growth contributor to India. India is living on its own now as one of the challenging developed countries on way soon to become by 2025 or 2030 or whatever the time scale is. But then this is based on the full skeletal support of agriculture, which is what has made India what it is today. That's because India is the second largest arable land resource available in the world, which we are using very effectively. And India is also the country which uses most of its cultivable land effectively than any other country which have much less land than India has. That's a fantastic, I'd say, arrangement. Like when people have money, they don't know how to use it best. But here in our case, we have land, most land almost, and still we are able to use it most than any other countries. Then about the agroclimatic variabilities which agriculture can face. India has almost all of them, 15 of the 20 major agroclimatic regions which FAO has described. So that's another achievement in a sense that we have been able to adapt to the agronomic situations of different agroclimatic conditions, which is again an achievement of agriculture research system, which has enabled Indian farmers to have technologies and capacitated them to have best use of those people. Then there are 46 of the 60 known soil types in which agriculture happens in India, which is another great advantage and also an exploiting phenomena which Indians have very effectively used thanks to the soil scientists. Then 11.4% of global food production in only 2.8% of global agricultural land, which is factor 4.1, which matches China. That's another important thing for all of us to know is not only that we are matching China with population, we are also matching China, though we have only 2.8% of global agricultural land, that we are doing effective agriculture despite all those legacies of poverty, poor farmer, bechara kisan, all those which are accompanying the farming system in India. And then so much of subsidies and then direct cash payment which this government has introduced, enabling farmers to survive crisis periods. But as agriculture itself is concerned, the produce, the products, and the resource for industrialization, all of them have been effectively happening, which is different from the economic situation. That's a parody here. The agriculture is fantastic, but the farmer situation is not as fantastic. That is where there is some social revolution that needs to happen. And that's where industry has to contribute, acknowledging the services of these service providers. That's something we must all know, that we owe it to the farmers, minus which we would not have been surviving as India has survived now, despite the COVID infestation and then the affectment that continue to hurt India in terms of agroclimatic variations of high temperature, drought, then flooding. The ironical situation is you have the same time when one region is fully flooded and another region is starved of water at the same time, same day, same time, same hour, same second, and almost same crop. This is another fantastic variability of extremes India faces. No other country has this luxury, and no other country has this crisis. So that's why Indian agriculture has lived with India and India has lived with agriculture. That's the basis which should be very, very clear in anybody, whether if you're a Tata listening or an Ambani listening or anybody listening, this has to be acknowledged, that the basis on which all of you have become what you are. Then agriculture is a primary source of livelihood for 58% of India's population today, which is important and that should be recognized. In the recent output from FAO, they have mentioned that what is important is agriculture as a strategic framework is the basis for any country to survive. For the agri-food the systems, The production of better food, better nutrition, better environment that gives better life is based on agriculture. So the SDG 1, that is the development goal 1, has no poverty, and India has very say closely achieved it among all other developing countries. Then these are the 4 cross-cutting, cross-sectional technologies which need to be supported. The technology, the innovation, data, and the complementation with the government has to follow by support of the government systems and human capital that is generated to make use of these technologies. So this is what is the trade-off which is required, and Indian agriculture is something that needs to be exploited. Most people believe that Indian markets, our agricultural market in India, is an unexploited status, the bounty that is waiting for India to happen. The global agriculture market is expected to have grown effectively, and that is 9,602.79 billion in 2020 and 10,181.92 billion in 2021 at a compound annual 6%, which has not happened in any country around the world for the last 10 years. That is the biggest achievement India has shown. That's something that all of us have to understand. Then comes the point of the global growth that is mainly due to companies rearranging their operations and recovering from COVID-19 impact. No other country has recovered as much as India has recovered. So that is why it is believed that India will skyrocket its expected agricultural growth to 13,133 by next 3 years. That is something, again, not represented in any country's economy at the moment. So India is actually looking forward. So all of us should be considering ourselves lucky that we are in a country which has endowed its people with everything that agriculture can provide as the basis on which India survives, or any human being survives. Food is the basis on which anyone survives, whether you are a developed countryman or a developing or underdeveloping countryman. So underdeveloped countryman. So therefore, food is the basic feature, and that is being made available from India's fantastic agricultural outputs, as well as the research that has led to produce those outputs. This has come out yesterday from the World Meteorological Organization. The temperature crisis is really going greater than ever historically seen. As you can see in the last quarter of this, you can see this. In the 2000 to 2020, in the last 25 years, there's been a terrific jump, which had never happened before in terms of number of degrees added to the average temperature. It's almost 1.4 degrees average that has been added over the last 25 years from the previous 25 years, which is very, very categorically crisis oriented. That is where we need to look at everything that enables to live with this. And this, the secret of India's success is Indian agricultural scientists have been able to provide the technologies to cope with this. And that is where the private organizations and the private industry has to join hands with the public sector, which has been doing the basic research output, to continue the output from these researchers to convert into technologies. And
Megha, please mute everybody else. जी सर.
Sir, please unmute.
Sir, we are not able to hear you, sir.
Sir, please unmute yourself.
Unmute कीजिए sir. आप mute हैं sir.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Are you able to hear now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Sorry. Did you hear the global temperature related point which I mentioned?
No, sir. We were just listening. हाँ, sir. ये आपको थोड़ा सा repeat कर रहे हैं, sir.
Okay. See, this has come. Okay, all right. This has been released last this March only, and there it has been seen that the global temperature rise is a #1 challenge to agriculture, and India faces the most of it. That's because of the tropical nature in which we survive. And that's the reason. But what is important for all of you to understand is this 1.2 to 1.4 degrees rise in the average temperature that has happened in the last 25 years, 2000 to 2020, is something that is very vital for all other rearrangements to happen, including in crop growth, crop related scheduling, then crop cycles, then the agricultural season scheduling. Seasons are like earlier, the winter season, which we used to call, which you call as Rabi season, used to start somewhere in the month of November, first week of November, and end by April or just about the end of April. But today it is squeezing further. It is not starting before November 15th. Winter is not starting before November 15th to November 30th. And the season is getting curtailed at the end of March. That's happening because of this rise, this temperature rise average. That's the reason that's happening. So the crop physiologists and crop breeders have to work together to see that the crops which are getting cultivated by the farmers are able to cope with this without reducing the yield. So far, India has succeeded dramatically, and that's the reason India is very, very well managing its own system of agriculture. Now, let me go to the next slide. This is what came yesterday, okay? The greenhouse gases is now going to be saying as more bad news for the planet. They have hit the newest high levels of greenhouse gases, the methane. Methane is a major gas that has happened. And how the countries will cope with this to feed the world by 2050 becomes even more critical now. Okay? This was done in 2009, but now, which has been reinforced last week, the 21st century is going to see much more harsher agricultural conditions than ever before noted under any crisis. So that's where things have to change. So what is the future available for Indian for agriculture? You just see this is also again FAO data which has come out recently from their book on how to manage the crisis of feeding the world with new economies surviving and the social revolutions happening. The economic growth and population dynamics are the driving structural change of economies is the caption. And the box clearly shows the agricultural investment, technology, and innovations are the factors which are boosting productivity, and growth of yields has showed rates that are too low for comfort, is on a global range. But India has defeated this part so far. So far, despite all the adversities, all the predictions of going to be a poor monsoon year, then year with so much of drought, so much of heat, stresses of every kind, your production will go down significantly, except last year, where the tonnage of total food production got reduced by about 4.5 million tons from the expected, total output. In the case of wheat, in all other crops, we have been able to manage extremely well. Wheat also did better than previous years, but then the expected yield, which was supposed to be about 110 million tons, got reduced to 108 million tons. But this year, we are predicting 112, and the last month's rains have caused some kind of disarray. But then, as I understand, this is not going to hurt the productivity so much and production so much. So India has defied this prediction of FAO that the agricultural growth and yield that has been shown is too low for comfort, is being defied by India. Now, look at world agriculture at large. So this is something, again, this has come out in FAO 2022 report. 23 report is yet not in. So the data available is up to 2020, on which the latest information is being given. The gross agricultural value added has increased tremendously over the last 20 years globally, and there was 73%. And India has added more than 85% in its own perspective during the same period. Then the share of agricultural GDP to the global GDP is 4%. India is continuing to be around more than 10%, now about 14%. Okay, it used to be much greater, But then that is not something to be say worried about. With industrial growth, industries growing at a faster rate, the GDP contribution will be more from those. So therefore, agricultural share would obviously reduce. Something has to reduce in order to accommodate some other. So therefore, that reduction is happening, which does not at the moment harm, because alarm also, because the global share is only about 4%, whereas India is still very comfortable with more than 10%, which means the people who work on agriculture do not really have to be concerned about unemployment or any other such problems. Then workflow employed in agriculture is, as you see, is 40% to 27% during the last 2 decades. So 13% reduction in the say employment status. But in India, it is not so. Again, in the latest book, FAO has mentioned, which I will show subsequently, 58% of people still continue to be on agricultural development, agriculture-based vocation in India. So that means we are again not in this group, although on an average globally it is 27%, in India it is 50%, more than double of this. So these are several very broadly say showcasing India's strength in agriculture. The population is big, but then most of the population is contributing to agriculture. Despite the urbanization, movement to urban areas, despite all that, there's a rearrangement happening, which I'll try to highlight subsequently. Then pesticide usage has increased. See, when pesticide usage increases, does not mean chemical pesticide. Whether you use inorganic or organic pesticide, it is pesticide. So the use of pesticide is on the rise, which means the insects and the pests are also on the rise. To cope with them, you have to do it. Just like the vaccines, which are required for fighting the epidemics in the case of adults and human beings and animals, same thing in agriculture, say crops and animals, where you need to have the pesticides, you need to have those which are going to cure them of the disease-causing organisms. So these are the points which are important for agriculture, and therefore industry, which is not directly connected with agriculture, has to work in these areas of providing the fertilizer as input and pesticide as input, irrespective of the source of that being organic or chemical, inorganic. So that is a different factor. There's a different ball game and different argument, different discussion. But the point is, it is important that people have to contribute who are non-agriculturists. That is, industries have to work in these input provision. So inputs have to be provided by non-agricultural industry, and agriculture will therefore be linked with non-agricultural industry for its own survival. And the industry will, in circle, complete its survival based on the food made available to the people who are working in the industry. So therefore, they both have to cooperate and go hand in hand. Therefore, that element has to be continued. So it's all looking very great in terms of very positive feature of primary crop production also is on the rise to 53%, which is over the last 2 decades, that is. And the primary crop production is again continuing to be the same for crops, sugarcane, maize, wheat, and rice. No new crops have taken over the last 2 decades to cover significant areas. So, which means our investments in these basic crops, although India is now trying to showcase the use of millets, is going to be a long way off, even for India to have one of the millets come very close to even maize. Maize was also part of millet earlier, but the millet what we are talking about is the so-called coarse millets or minor millets or nutritive high nutrient millets, which are not starch based so much as maize is. So maize is out of it, the others are in it. So those are the ones which are not coming at the moment close to even maize. So therefore, it's going to be a long way off for millets to come handy in this. The day it happens, then there'll be much more nutritional strengthening of dietary and the human beings, and the better health will come in place. So this is something that the industry can support. Convert the millets into edible or with shelf life based food conversion, which is the major problem with most of these millets. They don't have more than 6 months of shelf life. That's the reason most people cannot purchase as industrial processing or for direct sale as atta or direct use. Okay. Same thing is in the case of as people are able to buy more, their economic conditions are getting better, purchasing capacity becomes better, the use of edible oils goes high. That's something, and that's one area where India has not done well, edible oils. So you see, globally also the same point happens. More than 118% increment in oil production has happened. That which means it is getting consumed. 118% in last 2 decades is the doubling has happened, and it is being consumed. Even today, we are running short of oil seeds. We are 1/5 of the global population. So even we are facing it today, which means the doubling of vegetable oil production has not enabled yet the capacity of purchasing capacity of human beings in consuming that oil. So that has to be something on which industry as well as agricultural research has to join hands to see how best to convert the vegetable oils which are not yet exploited to increase this potential and increase this total production. So this is something where a more policy related matters had to come into feature. Then this is another important point for us to understand the sustainability and environmental aspects. Uh, Agriculture cannot be separated from the environment. Every single day, the farmer wishes that he doesn't have to face something that he does not expect, like rain or hailstorm or sudden drought or sudden heat. Any of the aspects are integral to agriculture, and that has to be something dealt with. Not only in the social economic phenomena of insurance related point, but preventing the losses that happen on the field. That is where agricultural sciences have to double their investment on overcoming these unexpected challenges, which can continue to happen more, as explained in the very first slide, that the climate change has that is going to be grossly dependent on it. Fortunately, although there has been a reduction from 127 to 94 in most cases, India has been able to deal with it successfully with 4% increase in the same period. That's another great achievement for a large country like this, for a large country with so much of people, so many of people dependent on agriculture. Still, we are able to increase the area under forestation is something really great. So that's where we have to say hats off to the policymakers, the research integration between forest research, social science research, then the tribe and the management of societies in the rural areas, and finally the agricultural high-tech, say, usage of new technologies. All of them have to go together without hurting each other, and that is how it can work together. That what India has shown very, very clearly. That is something we have to be very proud of. That's why the policymakers who decided to make Indian say Council of Forest Research, Indian Council of Agriculture Research, Indian Forest Service, then maintenance of forests, then fixing a strategy of the criminal level of say orientation to anything that happens in forests, either the animal or the flora or the fauna damage caused by any other individual other than the tribes is something that is criminal. And that kind of status given is the reason why we are able to say reduce felling of trees or deforestation and enable forest spread better. And that's one of the best ways to counter the environmental crisis. Now coming to the say more important parts of narrating directly to Indian agriculture now. As I said, 58% are dependent on agriculture and 42% only are on other occasion. But the farmers who are the major contributors to it, 87% of them become those who are have-nots or less havers. That means they are either on the marginal side or on the small side. That means they are not economically well off, they are not comfortable, they don't come under the middle class, middle income class people in the country. That is where is the crisis. We have to upgrade them, uplift them to be part of the people. Most urbanites are today, about 85% of urbanites, urban areas, cities, are on the lower middle class, middle class group. Farmers are not there. So rurality and poverty are at the moment on the lower middle class group at a higher crisis, higher risk of getting lost in the name of farming profession. And farmers have to be therefore encouraged not to lose heart by making their economics as viable, as vital, as flourishing as any other technology. Really speaking, dispassionately speaking, the wheat which we buy today at about 24 to 25 rupees a kilo should really be at more than 135 to 140 rupees a kilo. Really speaking, if we had kept pace with all of the higher charges we are paying for every other commodity, okay, every other non-agricultural commodity. The price we are paying for petrol, the price we are paying for our clothing which we buy, or the footwear, or electronic gadgetry, or anything that we are using, fans, or anything that we are using. The 2 decades price which we used to pay to buy one, and what we are paying today is not comparable to what you used to pay for buying 1 kg of wheat 2 decades ago and 1 kg of wheat today. So that balance is the one that is hurting the farmers. And that imbalance is something most governments are not able to deal with at the moment. That's because the moment the price of arhar goes from 130 rupees to 160 rupees, there is a crisis. There is a huge social crisis. Everybody is up in the arms, hitting the government that the inflation has gone high, but they don't bother whether they're buying normal mobiles today, which they bought about 3,000 rupees about 2 decades ago when the mobiles were introduced, even when they were introduced new, today at 1,20,000 rupees. Nobody is bothered about it. The cars, which used to be purchased by less than 3 lakh rupees, today are more than 6 lakh rupees. So these people are not bothering about and not crying their, say, crying horse on the, say, inflation. But when the commodity tomato price goes from 40 rupees to 100 rupees because of the perishability and lack of availability or whatever might have happened, there is crisis. So this imbalance is something that has to be absorbed by the society and encouraged to overcome. That is when the farmers will get up from that small marginal group into being in the category of lower middle group or the poor group. So that is where. This is what is ironical. Those who are able to make India stand up are not able to stand on their own. That is something that has to be done. I don't really like this feature of getting 16,000 rupees annually through the say direct payment basis the government is releasing to them. It is not what they are living for. Okay, the government is supporting them to survive, but that is not the way by which their contribution has to be recognized. So something has to be done. The social responsibilities of industries and many other things have to be reoriented. I do not know how best it can happen, but some real chiseling of the policies related to society and social circumstances, enabling farmers to have better living standards, which is not there. Their children cannot go to good schools because of the crisis they have. Either we make good schools, I mean, let's not divert, but these are the points. When it gets to farmers, I get carried away. Sorry for it. But then that's the point. And that's where government has to rethink, our industry and the society at large has to support the government to enable farmers to go up. 87% or 58%, that's roughly 45% of people are 44% people are under that 44% of total country are under that category of less than comfortable livers. So that is nothing that can help India in becoming the lead country or a country which is on the developed country basis. That has to change. That's where things have to map. But what is important for us to realize is the percent contribution by farming systems is on a household basis is almost similar to a non-household basis on average India. Okay. Only thing is the household of a farmer is much larger than household of a urban person. Therefore, that average, although similar, 142.5 thousand per year, 144.8 thousand per year. That is a comparison. Only about 2,000 rupees different between two farm holdings, two family holdings. Only thing is, in one case you have average of 7, in one case you have average of 4. So that's the difference between the two. That means almost double the income is enjoyed by urban family, middle class family. So that is where the difference is, and that has to be coped with. Now, you see, despite all this, the gross value added by Indian agriculture is so much, and because of which India has now reached 2.7 trillion economy. So we are getting closer to 3 trillion economy already. So getting 5 trillion by 2025 or 2030 is not a very distant dream if we manage to balance the gross value added from agriculture with GDP maintained at 10 to 14% as it is today. If we are able to do that and enable the farming systems of 58% people go up from their 144 to around 220, 30, then we are going to make it much, much faster and more comfortably. And that is where industry has to support. Now, the investments where industry will come in. In the last 18 years, the food processing industry has only attracted about 8.57 billions of international money, especially coming from in terms of US dollars. That's all, which is nothing at all. So the scope is tremendous here. See, just basmati export from India is more than $6 billion, $7 billion. Just one commodity. You have many, and basmati is not the best commodity that is being marketed from agriculture side or any other side from India. Yeah, although it is great, but that's not the best. You have many which are touching out $14 billion. And wheat also is now started being exported from India. That also is more than $2 billion. So when we are exporting so much of, say, value-based products, why are we not able to attract the international technology-based funding support and investments to have this food processed for better returns to the Indian public and better returns to the farmer? That is not happening. But the scope is tremendous. We have so much to be spared for the globe, and that means we have so much that is being consumed, and that consumed can be better consumed with food industry investment. So, and with better capacity of people to buy better goods today, and the spread of the malls and multi commodity big stores at large coming with several bounties, there should be a possibility for food processing industry also take the same kind of pace. That has to happen. So most of you who are listening to me, if understand this part, please contribute 20% of investment or 20% of your time in sharing with food processing industry development. Either you do it yourself or join hands with somebody, at least in economic form or in public shares or whatever, to engage yourself in food processing industry. There are quite a few coming up now, giving good international processed food industries good run to the money investment in India and for exporting. But the question is, you have to have this as a focused activity. It may not be the fastest returner, but over time, agriculture will be the fastest returner to every dollar you invest because of the non-perishability of it and because of the consumption and production consumption base of being very, very strong. Very few tonnage of perishable goods are lost because of non-use. It is because of a lack of transportation. So you have transportation along with your investment, you have your commodity never going to be lost because of low price or whatever. No hoarding happens because of that. So public investment in agriculture and private investment in agriculture has to match. Public investment is more than 40,000 crores at the moment, research included. But private investment is not more than 10,000 crores on an average, on an increment base. So that has to be changing and matched. So that is where we can think of making Indian agriculture or agriculture as something which is agribusiness. If agribusiness and agriculture were something equivalent to any other industry, then the distribution of institutional, non-institutional, and private have to be matched. Right now, there's a bias for institutional engagement. That means public or non-public industry is at a lower level of entrepreneurship. And the effort this group is making is to bring that group up. And that's why I'm happy to try to explain to them that you are going to be the saviors of the country, not only in terms of farming, but also for the country at large. We can send more rockets over the Mars, and more SLVs can be fired, not from Singapore, but from India. If you match public and private entrepreneurship related activity in agribusiness. At the moment, there is a 30-60 gap that has to narrow to 50-50. That's when the best thing will happen. So that is where the distribution workout will make. The market size is tremendous. There is no question of market in agriculture and allied industries at anything that is going to be crisis, because if you know, the total say business market size in India is around $800 billion. Okay, of that, over the last 5 years, for example, the agricultural sector is about $300 billion, with all these adversities I mentioned to you, which is something that you must realize. If you improvise on these to increase the 300 to 600 is not a big deal, really speaking. The wastages and the transportable products getting lost into something that is perished or that is sold at distress or even destroyed are not going to be lost to the industry as a raw material. This is where things can happen. So despite that, the market size is vibrant, and that should be realized. That too with all these negative features. If you increase that, you are going to change this whole factor to India contributing globally to agriculture. See, friends, it is not that agriculture cannot contribute. We have extremely good examples from Canada. Canada is a developed country. You know, the biggest source Canada gets its resource from agriculture. It is canola and the fishing industry. Third comes their oilseed industry. Canada does not even invest in printing the price tags which is sold on their products in Canadian shops. Even that is imported from America or any other country. Yet they are rich. That's because of agricultural support that they get. The entire canola which you consume, globe consumes, 90% of it comes from Canada. Wheat, it has a big role in, say, global food product. And the fish. The only thing between US and Canada, the features which give them, say, warlike phenomena, warlike situation, is the fishing industry. So that is where. So agriculture includes fish. So fish agriculture can become the sole industrialization resource, as Canada has already shown us. So therefore, India should not lag behind, and industries, investors should not lag behind. And you will see the investment has been extraordinarily high in the wheat, pulses, oilseeds, seed, and rice in terms of the area sown and in terms of area harvested, which means we are still working on those where industry is available to consume the goods, not really whether the market is of that value or because of the global demand on that product. It is not. No food in India is, no food products, agricultural product in India is based on a global demand. We are not even explored it at the moment. Whereas Canada, US, Europe, including flowers, they market for global needs. They produce for globe, not for them. India has not covered Indian demand as of now fully for it to go to the next level. That's where there is another scope. So these are tremendous scope-based identities. Only the volume of people, volume of industrial involvement, and volume of recognizing agriculture as a resource that has been underexploited or unexploited in major cases as industrial feed. That has not happened. That has to happen. My aim is to convince many of you or some of you to realize this tremendous potential we have and change this balance. We should not be producing maximum acreage of wheat, pulses, wheat as in the case of Rabi and rice in the case of Kharif, because they're consumed only about 50% of the area is sufficient to consume as required. We are exporting all right, but the export price balance is not as good as many other commodities which could have been only for industrialization based product development, and the margin that you realize from those is not as much as you realize from wheat or rice exporting. So that is where one has to deal with. We are exporting, that is a good thing, but that is not the best and most efficient economics of usage of the area. But why farmers are using that area? Because they have no other option to produce something that is of unique value that they will produce. Even the saffron, which is the best quality in the world. See, you see the irony. Kashmiri saffron is the best quality of saffron in the world. But who produces most? Spain. Why? And Spain's is not as good product, but they market well, they produce for the globe. This is where is this missing link. Investments are not happening in that perspective. So that means orientation to agri-goods as industry products is something that has to change the shape, change the color, and change the impacting assessment. Otherwise, it's a wastage. It's a waste, isn't it? The potential is so much in Jammu and Kashmir for the saffron to be produced. And with artificial conditions, we can enhance the production level much greater. And the value would have been much greater in return because that's the highest in demand saffron. But it is consumed and the rest of the demand is met by Spain with a lower quality. That is not, that scope has never been exploited by any industry. There's no industry involvement. It's only local industry which is doing it and exporters, but not really industrial processing and best use of economics and trading and business orientation to it. I'm just showing an example. That is how this area, this is a clue to showcase that we are doing it by more convenient heritage of stabilization rather than growth in terms of economics by sharing our land for agricultural usage. We must keep the requirement to sustain ourselves, but above that, reuse the land for those which give you better return per unit area. That has not happened. So our agriculture researchers also had to think on these lines. The investment of science, investment of people, investment of science developers, that is researchers, also has to go hand in hand in that. One scientist working in spices improvement, and that too dealing with 5 different crop species, is not going to be sufficient to take out that spice which is of a different value, a different production level to compete with the globe. That's not going to happen. So you have to target yourself, you have to look at it in that perspective, and then invest in people, invest in research money in order to give the farmers the basic requirement, basic technology, which he can now say compete with the world. For example, I must tell you another example. While working as a chairperson of PPFRA, I found one farmer from Coorg, that is in Karnataka, called Coorg or Madikeri, or is on the Western Ghats, a fantastic region of very serene environment. One wild species of pepper. It's not a normal pepper species, but wild species, but fantastic in its aroma, fantastic in its size and disease-free nature. No viruses so far have been affecting it. And this one family had been maintaining. I recognized it, recognized the farmer and gave him the right. And today he is receiving $37 for 20 grams of his pepper. And a French company has taken European rights from him after we give him the right on it. So that's a kind of advantage if we are able to invest. Why should a French company invest in it? Why not an Indian company? And why the European right has to be given to a French company? Why not to an Indian company? If Tata's can sell Jaguars and other cars globally, why not sell Pepper globally? So that is, and they have that globally demanded product that is available in the country. So this is where. So and the returns he is getting per tree, he is going it on only in about 2.5 acres of his areca nut plantation, where he is having about 220 odd plants, and those are the plants which is giving him all this resource. He is now a crorepati just by 3 years of investment, but based on that arrangement with France, not India. Not Indians. India only recognized its gave his right to him for global, so that nobody else can sell his material. But the point is this: there is so much of a scope in India, and that has to be realized. And industry has to open their eyes and look at these. They have to survey actually. They have to open their minds to agriculture also as an important commodity, just like the gadgetries they are importing in China to assemble in India for marketing watches or calculators or the mobile phones or whatever. They can do so in Indian product of agriculture and do the reverse to send it to China for marketing in their global centuries, global, say, whatever be the action making points of markets. So these are the points which one has to see. And look at the research. So that's why I put this slide up. From begging bowl to exporting to granaries is something that India has really shown. The agriculture allied sector export from India has risen to a large level, about 50 plus US billion today, as I explained to you, of which basmati rice is about $7 to $8 billion. But the question is, we have tremendous scope to increase this $50 billion, not rest on this, to make this $500 billion. By not these levels, you see spices even now contribute to a large extent of $3.15 billion spices, but that's not enough. You have to increase it further. That's where is the point we have to look at. Now the moment of pride is obviously because of this. India now has broken into top 5 agri-sector export countries, which is a real great achievement for any country which is just about 75 years old to believe from a predicted country which would be doomed to its own natural death because of starvation, as was predicted in 1950s, to a country which is now just following United States, Netherlands, Germany, France, Brazil. That's all. And between Brazil and India, hardly $5 billion. So I believe we have tremendous scope to cross even $79 billion of Netherlands quickly. And if you are able to deal with the exports that are in demand, our returns in agriculture, which I'll try to show when research things are coming up, that our returns in agriculture are much, much faster than all of the temperate countries, including US, Canada, Europe, except Australia, of course. Australia is tropical like ours, but most of the countries, Australia is not listed in this top 5. Hello?
Please
okay.
continue.
Yeah, all right. All right. See, the point is that we are now among the top few countries in agricultural export. This scope should be not allowed to rest on that laurels only. That should be only considered as a beginning. And we must lament that we are not even reached 5% of the capacity that we have in these $50 billion which were exported. That is where industry has to rethink its investment strategy, using agriculture as the first thing they have to think before they think of investing on any other, say, manufacturing process. Give it thought, then decide that you are not yet ready for it. But this works. One of the examples is one of my friends, K.K. Narayanan, who was in Metahelix, managing director of Metahelix, which is a seed producing company, had sold it off to Tata's Rallies at about roughly $100 crores. Then he invested in what is known as Soulful Food or Soul Food, which are now available as processed products, such as matching with Kellogg's in their product, but using Indian millets. Believe it or not, in less than 4 years, he is now on 300 crores, basis, less than 4 years. And already Tatas have opted to buy that company also. And that's now included in the global market to fight or compete with, not fight, compete with Nestle and Kellogg's. So that's an example, just 4 years. Okay, and I watched it myself and watched him myself, how they did it. It's such a small, just 4 people started this. I mean, he was the only investor and 4 employees, 1 nutritionist, 1 biochemist, and 1 culinary expert. That's it. That's how we started. And now it is 300 crores plus. So this is what is a scope that exists in agricultural commodity and conversion. So there's lots of these features that are possible in agriculture in India. The biggest impact decision India has ever taken is this: Green Revolution, which is why we are today on a scale of becoming leader of the G20. We will be in United Nations Security Council. We are going to be in the, added to the G7 to make it G8. How is this possible? How was this made possible? If India had not invested in Green Revolution, we would have only been struggling like Nigeria today or any other country today in Africa, other than South Africa. We would have been struggling only. Today, we can buy food at any time from anywhere. We can buy milk from any shop anywhere in the country. In my own childhood, I have seen limited time, limited level of availability of any of these commodities. Vegetables, hardly available. Milk, we used to stand in the queue before it got exhausted. That is the case. Today is all different. How has this happened? It's the Green Revolution which enabled all of it. It is not be otherwise. Today, if you are able to manufacture so many cars, so many, it's fantastic that has happened, as you see. But what is to be recognized is the base for all of this has been this the government took in having Green Revolution. And these 3 people, I just want to showcase these 3 people, 2 of them Indians, M.S. Swaminathan and C. Subramanian. C. Subramanian was a minister who helped Dr. Swaminathan to take his decision to bring in Green Revolution. And Borlaug was the one who provided him what Swaminathan asked for. From the earlier known feature that Mexican wheat came into India and India started improving its wheat, etc. It is not so. It is just like you buy petrol from the Gulf because you know that you need petrol and you get it there. So it is not that you cannot have it. Same thing, Swaminathan knew that he has to reduce the height of the plant and have it accept more chemical fertilizer, nutrition that is fed to it by being fertilizer responsive. He did not have any material in India which did it. So he had to import it. He knew what he has to get it. It was not arm that was received by him. It was not something that was given to him by gratis or by somebody who was lending in sympathy. It was not so. He asked for this material to be coming to India. He wanted this material. They did not know. The Semit people or Mexicans did not know that this would be causing revolution. This would be making difference. It is he who asked for it. And of course, Borlaug cooperated and he supported. He got Nobel for it. Subramanian, who was a politician, got his Bharat Ratna for it. And this man, M.S. Swaminathan, has yet not received his Bharat Ratna. I have nominated him in my capacity twice to Bharat Ratna, but it did not happen yet. But he deserves to. He deserves this for having India to stand up where we are today. So this hand-in-hand green revolution is supported by IRI. IRI did the green revolution. He was the director of IRI, and he did it. And this is the statement which then the Viceroy, Curzon, Lord Curzon, marked in 1904 when this IRI investment was happening. He said the seed I'm planting would soon blossom out and making Pusa the nucleus of agricultural activities, research and education, which would not only benefit Bihar and Bengal, because originally Pusa was in Bihar, but the whole of the country, and would attract the best of talents from India and abroad. This actually happened. And today we are at such a big level. And what William and Paul Paddock predicted in their book, Famine 1975, saying that India is sitting on a population bomb and it will be challenging to any funding agency. This is 1958, okay? They did it in 1958. This book was in 1958, title on 1975. They said by 1975, India will not survive. See, I'm talking to you. My active period in I joined BSCAG in 1975. So that is a year India would not have survived, according to them. And this challenge was defeated by Swaminathan and VP Pal in IRI when they sat together in 1961 to see that we'll falsify this prediction and prove to the world that we are going to stand up. We are having the basic agricultural knowledge sufficient enough. With more research in it, we will be able to deal with it. And that's what they did. That is how Swaminathan came to know that he has this. His prediction was that we have to reduce the height of wheat. Example, we have to reduce the height of wheat, and he knew our material don't have the dwarfing genes, and we should get it from somewhere else. And he looked for it and found that this is available in so and so place, and that is how it was approached. That is how it came in. It was never as something that was given by a gratis form or anything. And only 14 grams of that material came to India in 1962. And in 1963, Swaminathan made that 14 grams to today's 112 million tons produced. That is how the revolution. The trick was only this. Indian wheat was like this, which is now left, extreme left in 1960. And that was converted into the middle level or the last level, depending on the requirement, by using the dwarfing genes, which became high fertilizer responsive, then had all the capacity to not lodge despite the high grains on the tip of the plant, and that is where the strength of higher production happened. So what was 11 million tons production at that level became 24 million tons. That is how the revolution name came in. So 24 million tons production gave it the name of Green Revolution. Today we are 112 million tons. No other country, and in the same area, okay? Same area for about 30 million hectares. Area did not change. That 30 million hectares, which gave 24 million tons to get the name of Green Revolution, today is 110 plus million tons, which is something great, 4-5 times better than what it was when the revolution happened. Fantastic. No other technology, no other country has ever matched it. That's why I said Swaminathan does deserve a big Bharat Ratna soon. He is now 98, and it's best if that comes to him. During the period, he understands what is coming to him. He is now mentally as active as he was before. So therefore, I believe if the government does it, there's a great, say a reward to agriculture scientist community, which has made India as important as we are today, a global power. And the reasons for success, as I explained to you, was this Swaminathan, politicians, the government of India, and the global bureaucracy which supported it, and the polity, bureaucracy, scientific community, and seed producers. Fortunately, the bureaucracy has also supported agriculture greatly. Despite fund not coming as much as the fund could be given by the government, but the bureaucrats who have understood the need to have technological growth have been in very good link with bureaucrats, with technocrats and technicians and the scientists, and supported research, supported to a large extent establishment of institutions, which enabled Indian public. There is no other country which has as many public agricultural research institutions as India has. So to that level, our policymakers have greatly supported. The funding has to come up, and the private industry has to match this investment in public sector by public sector in order to see that the other areas which are non-food security related areas, but agriculturally more vibrant areas, are also catered to very effectively. Not just cotton. One is doing it in cotton and to an extent in sugar, but in no other commodity, private industry is as involved as they should. So that's where the scope. Okay, and that should happen. Saffron is one example which I just indicated to you, and the pepper is another one. As examples, they are just tips of icebergs, multiple icebergs, not one. And these have to be looked at in a different perspective. So this is something that is very important. But the challenges are many, and the challenges are that our growing population. Today, we are already number one in the world in terms of population, and the demand is that by 2050, we have to have 377. We're already very close to it now. Already come very close to 377 already in 2023. So therefore, that is not a crisis, I believe, in terms of reaching these 377 million tons. So that challenge part is well attended. But what is required is to focus on some elements which not only keep these 377s, because we cannot increase the land area. So within the available land area, we have to look at other things where we get to the 377 as far as food related matter is concerned, but minimize this area to meet the 377 and allow that other area for commercial agriculture, which is where is an investment required. Research investment also first, then industrial investment, and these are required. So that may be enabled as quickly as possible from not only policymakers, from industry and public system linkages, either in PPP mode or whatever mode as possible for that to happen. And we have already achieved records year after year, and where we were in 2021 and where we are today. There is so many records that we have been creating in food grains, rice, then say maize, pulses, say chickpea, oil seeds, groundnut, quite a few. We have been able to meet record production each year. So that is not something on which we can say be complacent on. We have to improve not only food security part, but also related to self-sufficiency of India in terms of not investing so much on oilseed in importing it as the major factor. Pulses we are able to, I think, tackle, but oilseeds we are still not one. But other commodities where industry can effectively join hands should be able to stabilize farmers' income and growth. That is inclusive with the industrial growth. So if these two things happen, then we'll be able to match globe as developed country much earlier than 2050. Okay, before we get into 100 years of independence, we will become developed country if we match this. But without forgetting this average size holding getting reduced. That means industry orientation has to be much more important in meeting these demands. We have to cooperatively work with, like leasing in land and sharing land rather than being independent producer and independent marketer. That's not going to help. So that is why industry, which may be non-agriculture involved, but in organizing agriculture, they can be an industry. These are so many areas open. You need not be an expert, but you can only be a marketing expert to realize where the market is holding for one product and how you can invest in that location to aggregate, say, a large area to produce that in-demand market product. That's all you have to do. Invest only in that. You don't have to be expert in that commodity. Leave it to the farmers, leave it to the scientists. But that job you can do. So these are areas which are not explained in any book. These are not areas which are even in policy documents. You don't see this. You have to survey and realize this. You have to survey this, the requirement in the market, where is it best possible to do it at the most economic level, and how you can disaggregate the farmers to change their old cultural practices, agricultural practices, make them shift over to this, give them assurance, give them buyback, whatever. Consequently, they can help you in aggregating the required product and you be the master to deal with it. So this is an investment which is better than any other investment of live, liquid based, industry that you would like to take up yourself. You're only making others do it. You're only scheduling it and transporting it and stocking it as any other stockist is. So that is where is the important factor which you have to realize in those products which can be converted into big money. And this is what NABARD survey in 2018 showed, that it is very alarming. If you don't get into this, individual farmer will decimate. If he is allowed to do what he is doing today without an industry's involvement, then he will, the distribution is happening by heritage. If there are 3 children, the land is getting distributed among these 3 children, and the average size is getting reduced further. So the production investment will be accordingly reduced. It cannot be done better. Who is going to be the loser? India at large. We should not allow that to happen. Okay, and that's where we have to make other resource system. So many things. These are all technologies. Water resources have to be best used. Why do you have to grow those crops which require more water? Look at this option, or make those crops take less water, or grow other crops which need less water. You have to see which crops can be targeted, which have global market, which have national market. That's the thing which has to happen. That orientation has to happen in policymakers related to markets and policymakers related to research. They also had to reorient. The commodity-based agricultural research institution, which happened, I was not a supporter of that. If I was a decision maker, allowed to make the decision anytime, I would never have allowed this crop-based research institutions. That is not going to help. Because there's a tendency for every crop-based institution to invest only on his or her crop. Make it the crop which should not go. Lament if area gets reduced, or this area is getting reduced, my crop is going to be out of reckonance. That feeling should never come in. And agriculture cannot be single commodity based. So these things should not happen. I have tried my best and succeeded in getting in the new agriculture policy this input, that by 2030, all this segregation of horticulture, crop science, and animal science is separated in research in terms of universities separated out, will now be integrated together. Because agriculture is holistic, agriculture has to be seen holistic. Otherwise, this water resource and other resources, land resource, cannot be efficiently used. So that is where it has to happen. And global climate is sitting on all of this. So climate change, is sitting on all of this, and that has to happen. And we have already demonstrated our capacities. I know most of you must have got tired or getting now bored on continuous talking on the same subject. But I just briefly tell you, in the last 40 years, we have made 65% of the gain we have made in the case of wheat by research investment and converting it into increased productivity per area. So 203% gain in 60 years. In 40 years, between 1945 and 1960, not 1945, say the research in IRA started in 1905. So 1905 to 1947, the period of independence, in that 40 years, we had 65% gain in research in wheat. But between 1947 and the next 60 years, we have been able to make 203% gain. So investment in research and good research will always be paying back. Is an example shown by wheat. Same in the case of rice. And this is an example which ADG explained to you, was a variety in which we now hold the global record in terms of the maximum area coverage by one variety, more than 10 billion hectares for more than 5 years. And the best variety for which global World Food Prize was won by Dr. G.S. Kush of Manila. The best area that one variety of his IR64 covered was only 5.7 million hectares over more than 20 countries. Whereas in India, we have been able to grow SD 2967 in 10 million hectares. It is not the question of growing in a larger area. The question is making farmers realize and enable them to get the variety of seed as required when they required it. First, to make the potential of the variety to grow and adapt in variable conditions. then enable farmers to get the seed. So this was done. So that's where the policy and research joined together. And that's what it is. And more than 220 seed companies, which the ITMU, Akriti's and ADG's unit only enabled to happen, and former say unit of ADG enabled to happen, was about 220 seed companies join hands with us. So this is how, this is a very simplistic model of private public investment. That is not a great investment in terms of private public, because the product was already ready and it was only handed on platter to the industry. Industry did not invest in any risk factor. So that is not therefore the best example of public-private partnership, where the risk was only absorbed by the public sector. But if the industry is vibrant enough to realize they can involve themselves in much more public-private say practices in terms of enhancing the research output of new technologies. Same thing in the case of rice. And in rice, they did one more fantastic step of reducing the duration in the case of basmati rice and increasing the yield. That does not happen that easily. Normally, when you say you see, this is something important. If you look at the global figures, non-agricultural people will see Europe, England, for example, has 12 tons per hectare yield. Egypt, 12 tons per hectare yield of wheat. But that 12 tons is from 270 days of growth. Whereas in India, our 8 to 9 tons is coming from 135 to 150 days of growth. 50% duration is reduced. And in that other 50% duration available, you are growing rice and taking another 8 to 10 tons. So totally we are able to take more than 14 to 15 tons from the same land by growing 2 crops, which Europe cultivated in 1 year with 1 crop. And are we not better than them? But if you look at the features of productivity, so many tons per hectare, they look better. And people say India and production low, but they don't see in what duration Indian production was done. So that is a point which is important for most of us to realize. And that is how, the scope exists. That is how the scope can be reoriented. Punjab, for example, it produces about 5 tons per hectare from its every cultivated area. Whereas Madhya Pradesh, equally potentially good enough, is producing only 1.3 tons per hectare. So the potential is for us to change this 1.3 to 4.7. Technologies have to come in. All the other support systems that Punjab has been enjoying has to be created in Madhya Pradesh, other than the environment factor. Environment factor related parameters have been very well covered by the technologies themselves. We have been able to produce those varieties of the same wheat, same rice, same sugarcane, same pearl millet, same maize, which is grown in Madhya, same soybean grown in Madhya Pradesh as can be grown in Punjab or other places. So that's the point which is important for you to realize, that we can enable this to go out of reckonance in terms of converting these starved agricultural produce potential included states into becoming agriculture production improving states, improved agriculture production states. That's where the scope is, which cannot happen, which is not possible without private investment. An example is the requirement of country is 321 lakh quintals in terms of seed. That too with only 40% replacement of new seed. And if you make it 100%, this will be 2.5 times more than this. But what you're producing is only 100,000 quintals. So this is something which is very important for us to see where the scope is in converting those low production states with this basic input of seed. Just an example. Same thing with the distribution of other things. And I've already told you that India has the best efficiency in terms of usage of available land, with more than 1.47, say, as the cropping intensity. That means roughly on an average, every farmer grows 1.5 crops in every acre that is available to him. Whereas most global crops are less than 1. If you look at, because 1 year they grow, 1 year they don't grow. That is because this table can tell you, India has been able to have the per day productivity better than most countries. You see the last column. In case of wheat, Indian per day productivity is 30.32 kg per hectare, whereas that of UK is 28.42 kg. In China, 20.99. See, we are so many times better than China in terms of per day productivity. Okay. Same in the case of mustard, 11.31 kg per hectare per day. Okay. And China has 9. Canada, which is the ruler, is 8.5. So who is better? So this and our acreage is not any less than those. See, area, India 8.12 million hectares, Canada 8.8. It is not comparing, as in the case of rice, that Egypt produces that much, or some other country produces that much in only about 0.3 million hectares, whereas India has 42 million hectares. So comparing 0.3 to 0.42 is not possible. So there will be poor areas, large areas. If you segregate India into high productivity area and compare with global, you will compare that way also. But in the case of this, you very clearly see chickpea, for example, 7.65 is the per day productivity. That is, Indian chickpea is produced at 7.65 kgs per day, while that in Canada and USA is less than 5, around 5. So these are the things which are important for all of us to understand. That we have done exceedingly well in development of crop varieties, crop improvement part, and that contributes 50% to agriculture requirements, and rest is other 50% that has to come from nutrients, water, crop geometry, then all other inputs, then the weed related management, every other thing which is important for the farmer. And we know now that irrigation efficiency is something that we have to work with the climate change. And we have to convert ourselves from flood irrigation to drip irrigation or systems like this. So industry has to come forward in providing these inputs required for marketing and installation. It has happened in Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh to a large extent, drip irrigation system. So people are understanding this, but yet it is local industry. So less efficiency, poor technology, quality control is not as good. So those things have to change. So poor quality disables a farmer from investing, because if he has to keep investing for replacing each year rather than 5 years or something, that is not going to be very welcoming investment. So that is why good industry with good quality control has to join hands to convert and use this best feature of enabling best resource usage. So these are possible. There are several cases where industrial products are made available for enabling better resource management, but it is in a way pathetic. You just look at some example which I am showing you. Andhra Pradesh has 50% usage of the potential, okay, in drip irrigation, 52% in sprinkler irrigation, and 15% is in the other potential that is possible. Whereas UP, 2,207 is the million hectares available, hectare available, not million, 1,000 hectares available, and only 0.48% of it is converted into drip irrigation, 0.48, hardly anything, and 0.12 into sprinkler irrigation, which is not possible. So which cannot be. After the 10,789,000 hectares you have only 0.2% utilized for that purpose. Then where is the technology there, the usage there? So these states have to better themselves. So that is the scope. Obviously, there is no investor there in industry to provide the farmers with these drip irrigation systems, sprinkler irrigation systems. Who will provide them? The industry has to come forward. And that's when the farmer can adapt. And already horticulture and can be bettered with these technologies, drip irrigation, those technologies. And the signs are there in the Triennium 2006, that is 2006 to 2009. The fruit and vegetable coverage has significantly improved from say the 50 years scale of about 8% to 25%, 3 times increase in the area coverage. So as these facilities are getting made available, such as sprinklers and drip irrigation systems, this fruit and other say industry usage can be better, and these will become raw material for the industry with better returns. As I explained to you, export of food produce as processed food is much, much greater because of higher shelf value. That will make it. So losses can be reduced and value can be added. So that is where is the scope for these systems. And simple things such as custom hiring centers. There is no investment as required. Only through public investment research such as NICRA that has been enabled. Very few cases are there where private industry on its own, without any subsidy, has invested as it has invested in establishing a mall, establishing a public system for public usage at commercial price. That has not happened with this. See, industry is willing even to distribute power supply from the government, but not as much in establishing these kinds of systems, custom hiring systems. Either they are not aware of the potential this has, or they are believing that this is an easy access to public demand. There you have to work out for creating a demand, etc. So this is where they can join hands with public and help the public to realize that there are available support systems to them if they take up this, if they adopt this. And what is the best help of making the public system tell the farmers that if you adopt this, you will have this better, you have this production better, you will have your returns better, you will have economics better. They can do that job, and industry can provide that technology for the farmers to adopt. So this hand-in-hand movement can enable lots of developments. So public and private has to be integrated if agriculture has to succeed. And this example is again, I'm telling you with HD2967, which has this large area of factory coverage, and a country which was doomed to be begging from the world is now exporting wheat worth 11,728.36 crores as it did in 2022 till January 2023. Okay, the year of 2022, we have exported 11,728.36 crore rupees wheat. This is tremendous achievement. Something we can pat our back on, something on which the ADG and ITMU, Delhi, IARI can really pat themselves for enabling this. The resource for most of this is SD2967 so far, the variety. So one small achievement of this kind can open several things. This example is one. And a country which was doomed to import food is now exporting food. And our wheat varieties were supposed to be poor quality. Today, they are accepted quality. So there are so many things that can be done. This storage capacity, where is that? It is not there at all. Why should onion prices, tomato prices, and potato prices just crash like this as they're happening? Because of lack of storage facilities. This can be tremendously improved. 60 million tons can be stored if the storage capacity is improved and provided. There are good skills today, good technologies today, but most of them are related, good technologies are related to only seed storage, not product storage. So that has to happen. So that is where industry can come in. There can be big, say, cold storage system that can come up, and they will all be used very, very well. If you have a big investment, the investment their say cold storage requirements at lower price, and the price can be controlled in such a level without destroying the product, because without wasting the product. So many things, and all these technologies such as IP protection, then all those things can come in with more and more innovation, more and more investment between public and private. Both can come in, and they are going to lead one to the other one, and one thing can lead to bigger thing. And that is how the ISLVs or all those satellites can keep going high with this technologies. So coming to the last few couple of slides, it is well understood that about 80% of agriculture sector is driven by private companies. Given the involvement of 113 million farmer families, more needs to be done to provide them technology on the field and ensure remunerative prices. Enacting the liberal APMC law, scaling up digital technologies, and encouraging private players to set up mandis and lifting export ban, etc., should be the limits that should be priorities. So this is what Ashok Gulati, a famous economist, has said. So, but where is that investment? Has the sector invested enough to get the indigenized, getting indigenized to sustain the agriculture production? 90% of food crops and seed R&D is public sector only, as I explained to you by figures. The private sector deals with only an estimated 24 to 28% of agricultural area, less than 25 out of 139 million hectares. So what is then causing the farmers' distress? It is lukewarm or less than best investment by private industry. So there is a lot of scope and solution for private sector to provide to India, and they can also succeed very, very well. It is not that the private industry is going to invest in agriculture and their returns are going to be less than they would invest in any other sector. Never. The returns from agriculture is the fastest, and these are the areas. Seed supply, then as I explained to you, the aggregation and support system for raw material development, then dwindling of water resources, that is using better technologies for using the water, then fast degrading soils, that means the fertilizer supply and balanced fertilizer made available at time, then lack of mechanization for custom hiring facilities, then which means you can provide mechanization related facilities, then available bulk storage. So these are all areas in which the private sector can straight away invest, jump without looking at it, because that's all going to return only and give them advantages only, never going to be lost as loss-making investment. It will never be. First year or second year, it might be. But then from third to fourth year onwards, farmers will learn quickly. And once farmer learns to make money, he will never look back. That's the real case. So don't believe that farmers are less educated, so they will not support, they may not come back to you. It will never happen like that. They will always come back to you if investing in your product is going to give him 5 rupees, while investing in the local product gives him 1 rupee, he will go to you for the 5 rupees only. So there is no question of any other part that can come in, societal part or political part or any other thing cannot come in. They will work for you. So that's what happened. That's what I have realized by enabling or fixing higher price of seed, but giving them the seed in right time. It works. It should work in every other country. So these are the last eye openers which came in recent documentation 2023, that agricultural stocks are among the most significant areas in Indian economy. Most of you who are investors, who are say using private investment resource, have not really seen this part, that it is something that gives 17.8% of India's GDP and GVA. So therefore, it is one of the most significant areas. They don't know the area which is as big as this in terms of returns from the share economy. So farming stock business is something great. And here are the examples. These are the 5 top agriculture stock making industry. Avanti Feeds, animal feeds. Bayer Crop Science, Behrampur Chini Mills, Balrampur, sorry, the UPL Limited, PI Industries. See the market cap of these big industries, annual market cap, 50,688, 46,528. So it is not small industry. They are all big industries, bigger. And therefore, you must understand that one is not investing in, losing money. One is investing in big money only. So Indian economic growth firmly, therefore, depends on agriculture. Unlike IT, agriculture is not a rocket science. That's the biggest misunderstanding and biggest ill comparison that is afforded to agriculture, according to agriculture, which is unfortunate. That system has to change. The 9% of growth in GDP can be supported only if agriculture GDP grows by 4%. That we are maintaining at the moment. So therefore, we have set the platform going, and we are on very firm ground. The investment in agriculture, PPP, is the need of the hour, as explained to you, try to explain to the potential vendors. Then evergreen revolution is possible, provided we support science-based agriculture with due recognition to farmers and industrialists, like any other commercial producer investor. They will never be like, the farmers will never be the Malyas or others. Okay? I don't mean to abuse the name or anything else, but the question is, there will not be people who will, farmers will not be in that group of people who will ditch if they return, if they get better money. So recognizing the farmer's capacity as industrialists is something very, very important for you. Okay, it is not just investing in buying Air India or buying, say, whatever, I forgot Malya's airline name, Kingfisher. It's fine, you can invest. They will be, but farmers will not be of that kind. They cannot invest in that kind. But help them invest in whatever small they do, they will make it big. And multiple farmers can make you big, bigger than Malya's Kingfisher Airlines or Air India or Tata's. Okay. So whatever farming investment, farmers connection is something that will never be lost, and that will never be something that will be losing investment. Do not compromise on farmers' rights. It's the greatest service they have been doing for the humanity, and that will be nation's prosperity. Thank you. Thanks to the team IRA, and I owe sincere thanks to so many research contributions of my own colleagues in IRA.